My name is Marshall Smith. Aboriginal name Indabingangadi. Born near a windmill called Mingullatharndoo on Wailu Station. My mum's Mingullatharndoo from the Mount Bruce area, and my dad is Kurama from the Mount Rockman area. We were doing fencing, contract fencing, mostly through Wailu Cooline, and then we moved east to work on Dowding Station. But obviously they all came from that Rockley area for my time. Everybody chipped in and showed me, because I was probably the only kid, certainly on Dowding I was the only one capable of sort of being involved there, even though I was only 8. And my uncle Chubby Jones, Churchill Jones' father, he was the breaker, but he was also my trainer. He showed me how to do the canters and the gallops, and then my brother Des, who's passed on now, he and Uncle Chubby used to be probably the two that stood out with all the rough horses, and from the age of 8 I wanted to be like them, but of course I never did. They were, you know how when people say you got this careless courage or whatever it is, they never feared anything like. Rough horses was their recreation. They basically raced to see who was going to ride that horse. Because in those days they used to give to their nephews. My father gave Des over to Brother Stan Delaport, who was working on Wailu, and he trained Des up. But at around about the age of 12, his uncles, you saw Uncle David Cox's name, well he had other brothers, but 2 of the brothers were renowned stock rough riders, and my brother Des used to always talk about them. Old Gilbert Cox and Thomas Cox. Well, Gilbert taught Des how to ride rough stock. There's 2 types of rough riders. One's called a balance rider, and what happens with the balance rider is that he sits on the same type of saddle, but his body is straight from his heels back to his head when he's sitting in the saddle, and all he does is he pivots on the very central point of where the horse is twisting. And they say that balance riders are better than grip riders, but I question that, because I've seen a lot of grip riders, and the grip rider is somebody who squeezes with their leg, and most people get used to the grip riding because it's kind of part of them when they're learning how to ride a horse, because you sort of tighten up all the time. But balance riders are sort of, they're not few and far between, but they are special in some areas. And so that makes a difference. But the consequences of a balance rider, when they get down about 40 years old, their back's all gone, because what's happened is the cantle of the saddle will always hit them because they sit a lot straighter. Whereas the grip rider, he works out with his leg where that horse is pivoting, and he doesn't have to lay back a lot unless the horse is kicking high. If the horse is kicking high, obviously you sit back more, but that's only for that split second, of course. That's the difference. But the standard rules that my brother taught me, and he was very well known. He was one man that rolled a smoke on a horse called Dingo in Hammersley Station, so that's how much of a rider he was. But that's another story. What happens with a young horse is that the rules of getting on that fella is very different to rodeo. In the rodeo you got him sitting in the chute, so he's basically locked in and you come down on top of him. A different story when he's all saddled up and ready in a big yard, because he can do what he likes. But the first point is you grab his head, pull his head right around to the mane, which is tight, and then when you go to put your weight on him, you generally step up onto that stirrup 3 times. 3rd time you generally flip over. You've got to get him to feel your weight, and when the break has broken him, he would have given him that feeling anyway. But that 3rd time when you swing over, you got to make sure your stirrup goes in. But some riders are so good they don't really worry about that other stirrup. But I have to find that other stirrup. And then you either grip or you balance. But then you obviously loosen rein, because if you use it too tight, it'll pull you over the saddle. So, but all that kicks in, because if you've done it many times, it doesn't matter. It's all part of you anyway. Most Aboriginal stockmen, they were natural. Not only with riding the rough horse, they were natural with handling stock, they were natural with breaking horses. There were some who actually stood out because maybe their job was to break many horses on a station. But in general, in that era, of course, I'm talking about, most everyone knew how to tame a horse, and most everyone knew how to, ride a horse. But there were those that excelled, and people like Uncle Thomas, Uncle Gilbert, Dennis Ashburton. These are names that were renowned riders. My brother Des, Uncle Johnson Hicks, all those fellows, Stan Delaporte, for all of my uncles, my dad's brothers, Nicholas Cook's father, Uncle Chucky Dowding, they were all natural. And the other thing, of course, is a lot of those guys loved jumping off the saddle and grabbing a bull by the tail and pulling it over and all those kind of things. The first thing to remember with cattle, you watch, if you're in wild cattle territory, not the station stuff, you watch the hind legs. When the beef is fighting fit, you'll watch the hind legs will drop parallel. Okay, first signs of tiredness is they'll start dropping cross. Once they're crossing, you know that the leg is weary. But then you've got to watch the ears, because the eyeball works with the ear. Okay, so you've got to watch that ear to know whether it's safe for me to jump off while it's looking at me or not. And you're at full gallop, you train your horse to hit the brakes as soon as your weight shifts. And that's part of the training on stock camps as well. Shifting weight, the horse hits the brake and you jump off on the run. Hit the ground running. Don't get off and slow down and then try and catch up, because you won't get the beef. Even though they look slow, they can still get away from you. So you've got to get up as close as you can, spring off the horse, hit the ground running, grab the tail. If you're a right-hander, grab the upper tail, and then, the hairy bit at the bottom, you have to twist that. Once you've got that twisted, it's your grip, you step out, if you're a right-hand puller, and the beef will see you. As soon as he sees you, he's going to try and turn around and hook you. That's when he's off balance, you pull. Right, once he's down, you put the tail between his leg, the rear leg obviously, pull it up onto his rump, put your knee on his rump, he can't get up. No matter how big the bull is, he won't be able to get up until you've tied him. Once he's got his second wind back, never do that again. And the other habit that the old fellows used to have is what they call pulling them down by the tail off the horse. Now that's fine for that fella, because all he has to do is gallop up to the beef, grab that tail the same way with one hand this time, and make his horse gallop past him and pull it. That's fine, because the beef is going like this, but the man behind is the one that's got to hit the ground to grab it and hold it down. And that was not so fun, because you get up, sometimes they get up with the face up. And you've got to find out how fast you can run.